And of course, for your ones that you actually have a graph, you literally just have to travel along the line. And these are going to be left and right hand limit on this quiz. So you literally just have to say what number, and I would actually recommend finding that number on the graph, positive 2, highlighting your vertical, right? And then from the left, from the left, I'm going to travel down here. I am moving towards this number right here, -1. And that's how I'm going to figure out what I have. So when you have something like a piecewise function and you're doing a left-hand limit, you have to make sure you are approaching it on the side that includes that side of the limit. So you'll notice they chose -1, and -1 is your split, right? And they want it from the right. So they actually are coming from it greater than -1, right? And so you have to look at which function is greater than -1, right? And that's this second one, right? So even though at that point you're somewhere else, you're approaching it here, okay? And so you really want to see, does -1 cause a problem here? It does not, right? Even though it doesn't include -1, what does it look like -1 is going to be? Well, if it doesn't cause a problem, you can just plug it in. And so from the right-hand side, I would consider this one because right is greater than. And it doesn't cause a problem, so I can just plug it into that. -1 plus 3. Well, that's just 1 plus 3. That is 4. You can see that when you actually get to -1, you would actually use this guy, and you would be at positive 2. So when you actually get to -1, it's a jump. But because you're coming from the right-hand side, you've got to use the one that accounts for that domain, the right side of -1. Had it asked for the other one, we would have said, is there a problem at -1 in the other one? No, plug it in. So had it been from the left, we would have used the domain that was defined for smaller than -1. They asked for the right. That means greater than -1. And so we're going to use that one. It doesn't cause a problem. We're going to plug it in. Our answer here is just 4.
So if let's say x is going towards...
Can -x plus 3 cancel? It can, right? There is a problem a little bit, though, because they specifically want to the right of 3, which means specifically they want numbers just slightly bigger than 3, okay? While the whole thing cancels out, it's going to be, look at it this way, it's going to be either x over x or x over -x. Why do I know that? Well, my top's always going to be positive. That -x plus 3 on top is always positive. Why? It's an absolute value. The bottom, however, is not always positive. So even though it's going to cancel out, when I say cancel out, it's technically turning to a 1, right? Technically. So when you have absolute value, you have to decide, is it going to turn to a positive 1 or a -1 when I cancel it out? So then, well, I know the top's going to cancel to a positive 1, always. So I can go ahead and say, well, this guy's going to cancel out to a positive 1, right? But what happens on the bottom? Well, it depends on what number I'm talking about. On the bottom, something ever so slightly larger than 3, negated, and then adding 3 is going to be a negative. So the bottom's actually going to cancel to a -1. Now, had this been ever so slightly smaller than 3, that would have canceled out to a positive 1, right? So now I'm left with 5 times 1 on top and -1 on bottom. What is my limit? My limit is -5. The very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say, can I plug in a 1? Never assume, because of what section you're on, that you're going to have an infinite limit or something like that, right? You always want to see, my first step in any of these is, can I plug it in? I cannot, by the way. And so my next step is going to be, can I factor it, right? And so, because then I might be able to cancel my problem. The top does not cancel our factor. The bottom one is x minus 1, x minus 1. So my problem didn't cancel either because I'm moving towards 1. Now I'm moving towards 1 overall. Okay? So let's look at it from the left-hand side. So let's say I want to move towards 1 from the left-hand side. Okay? Yes? If it cannot cancel, what do I have? A vertical asymptote. So I know for a fact with a vertical asymptote at this point, I am going to have an infinity. I just need to figure out which one. And if it's the same from left and right, because it's not asking for left and right, it's asking for overall, which means they both have to be the same infinity. So from the left-hand side, something ever so smaller than positive 1. What is my top going to be? Something ever so, like 0.9 plus 1, positive or negative? Positive. First set of parentheses. 0.9 minus 1. 0.9 minus 1 again. What am I moving towards? Positive infinity. We're going to do the same thing from the right-hand side. 1.1 plus 1. Positive or negative? Right. Something ever so slightly larger than 1 minus 1. And the same thing again. What is this guy moving towards? They are the same. I have an overall limit, and my overall limit, positive infinity. All right, let's look at this next one. -3, can I just plug it in? No, that's a problem. I am going to factor to see if I can get rid of my problem. Can I get rid of my problem? I cannot. I am going to go through the same process because they are asking for overall limit. So I'm going to go to -3 from the left, and I am going to go to -3 from the right. 2 will always be positive. I'm just going to put a positive there. X plus 3, something ever so slightly smaller than -3 plus 3 is going to be a negative, right? So this guy's going to be negative. Something ever so slightly smaller than -3, -3.1 minus 3, well, that will also be a negative. So what is this doing from the left? From the left, I have a positive, a negative, and a negative. Positive or negative? What's my answer? Positive infinity, right? All right, my 2 is always positive. Something ever so slightly larger than -3 plus 3. Let's say -2.9 plus 3. Positive or negative? Positive, right? And then -2.9 minus 3 is negative. What is this guy? Negative. What's my problem? They're not asking. If they had been asking for left, I would have said positive infinity. If they had been asking for right, I would have said negative infinity. What were they asking for? Overall. It does not exist overall.
So it only exists if they're
-1. Can I plug in a -1 here?
No.
What happens when I plug in a -1?
Because you're in the denominator.
Yeah, we have a problem. So then I am going to say, let's see if I can factor it. And so I am going to factor this guy. We'll just leave that negative out there. We have x plus 1 here. Down here we have x minus 3, x plus 1. Can I cancel anything?
yeah, the X plus 1.
Yeah, the x plus 1s. I'm left with a -1 on top and an x minus 3 on bottom. I am doing the limit as x approaches -1.
So now you just plug it in.
I can just plug it in. I end up with a -1 over a -4, which is positive 1/4. All right.